U and Apos. Walking down a quiet street at night when you hear footsteps behind you. Your heart starts hammering. Vision narrows. Sounds become muffled like U and Apos. Underwater. Your hands go cold and numb. And here in Apos. The kicker. Your brain just lied to you about what in Apos actually happening. The threat might be real or it might be nothing, but your mind already chose the worst possible response before you even had a chance to think. Everything you believe about staying calm under pressure, about thinking clearly when it matters most, about trusting your instincts. That in Apos. The fairy tale version. The truth is your brain becomes your worst enemy the second danger walks through the door. And what I in Apos am about to show you ISN and Apos. Advice from some survival manual. This is the raw science of why smart people freeze, why trained individuals make fatal errors, and why your own mind will betray you when you need it most. Here in Apos. What nobody tells you about the human stress response. It wasn't an Apos. Designed for the threats you face today. Your nervous system is running Stone Age software in a digital world, and that mismatch creates cognitive breakdowns that look like stupidity but are actually predictable patterns of neural hijacking. The greatest lie you and Apos been sold is that fear makes you sharper. Fear makes you dumber. And the mechanisms I and Apos am about to reveal will change how you see every moment of panic you and Apos ever experienced. The first psychological law that controls your mind under threat is tunnel vision amplification. You think focus sharpens when danger hits. Wrong. Your visual field literally shrinks by up to 70% when your amygdala takes over. Imagine you and Apos, cornered in a parking garage by someone who seems aggressive. Your eyes lock onto their hands. You stop seeing the exit to your left. You stop noticing the other person approaching from behind. You stop processing anything except the single point of fixation your primitive brain selected. This happens because your sympathetic nervous system floods your visual cortex with stress hormones that narrow your peripheral awareness. It in Apos. Called perceptual narrowing, and it in Apos. Why people in car accidents say they only saw the headlights, not the road, not the guardrail, not the other vehicles. Your brain decides one detail matters and everything else becomes static. The practical reality. Under threat, you must force your eyes to scan. Wide sweeps. Left to right. Up and down. Break the tunnel or you in Apos. Miss the threat that actually kills you while staring at the one that doesn't in Apos. If you don an Apos. Actively fight this reflex, you become a target with blinders on. Your mind turns into a flashlight pointing at the wrong shadow while the real predator moves in the dark. You can in Apos. See anymore. The second mechanism is auditory exclusion, and it in Apos. More dangerous than you think. When your body hits peak stress, your brain literally turns down the volume on certain sounds while amplifying others. People in firefights report not hearing gunshots. Survivors of attacks say the screaming sounded distant and muffled. This ISN and Apos. Metaphorical. Your temporal lobe shuts down auditory processing for anything your amygdala labels as non-essential. So while you and Apos, straining to hear if someone and Apos behind you, your own nervous system is censoring the very information you need. The science shows that under extreme stress, you lose the ability to process complex verbal instructions. Someone yells in quat, "Get down now" in quat, and your brain hears garbled noise. This is why training has to be simple, why commands under pressure need to be 1 or 2 words maximum. Your mind ISN and Apos. Listening to sentences when it in Apos. Drowning in cortisol. Here in Apos. The brutal part. You think you in Apos. Being alert. You think your hearing is sharp. But you in Apos. Functionally deaf to half the threat environment while your brain plays tricks on your ears. The workaround is physical anchoring. Touch something solid. Feel your feet on the ground. This sensory input forces your nervous system to recalibrate and can restore some auditory processing. But if you rely on hearing alone to detect danger, you and Apos. Already compromised before the threat even materializes. Listen to what an Apos. Coming next. The third rule is time distortion, and it destroys your ability to make accurate decisions. During high-threat moment, your internal clock either speeds up or slows down, and you have zero control over which happens. Studies show some people experience events in slow motion while others report everything happening too fast to track. Both groups make identical errors. They misjudge how much time they have to respond. You think you have 5 seconds to decide. You have 2. Or you think you need to act now and you actually have room to breathe and assess. This temporal confusion comes from the prefrontal cortex losing sync with the hippocampus. Your working memory can and appos timestamp events accurately when stress hormones flood the system. So you either freeze because time feels infinite or you panic because time feels collapsed. The fatal consequence: you rush when you should wait, or you wait when you should move. People die in fires standing still because their brain told them they had more time to think. People die running into gunfire because their brain told them there was no time left. The only counter is pre-decided action thresholds. Before the threat, you define triggers. If X happens, I do Y. No thinking. No time assessment. Just mechanical response. Because your sense of time under pressure is about as reliable as a broken clock that an appos right twice a day but wrong the other 86,000 seconds. The fourth psychological trap is cognitive narrowing, which is different from tunnel vision but just as deadly. Your IQ drops when you and appos scared. Not metaphorically. Literally. Working memory capacity shrinks. Complex problem solving shuts down. You become dumber in real time. Researchers call this attentional capture, where your prefrontal cortex goes offline and your limbic system takes the wheel. So that clever escape plan you thought of while calm? Completely inaccessible when your heart rate hits 140 beats per minute. You revert to the simplest, most primitive responses. Run, fight, freeze, hide. Nothing sophisticated, nothing creative. Your brain becomes a hammer, and every problem looks like a nail you need to smash or run from. This is why people make obviously stupid choices during emergencies. Not because they and appos idiots, but because the thinking part of their brain just clocked out and left the scared animal in charge. The workaround is preloading simple responses. If your plan requires you to remember more than 3 steps under pressure, you and appos they already failed. Keep it stupidly simple because you will be stupidly simple when it matters. And if you think you and appos the exception, you and appos exactly the person this affects most. Confidence makes you blind to your own cognitive collapse. Here in appos where the truth hurts. The fifth mechanism is threat misidentification, and it and appos responsible for more fatal errors than almost anything else. Your brain is scanning for danger patterns, but it and appos using outdated threat libraries from your evolutionary past. So you respond to loud noises like they and appos predators. You respond to sudden movements like they and appos attacks. You respond to social aggression like it and appos physical violence. And meanwhile, the actual threats, the quiet manipulator, the slow-building Wei Xian, the subtle warning signs, sail right past your detection system because they dawn and appos match the pattern. Your amygdala is optimized for saber-toothed cats and rival tribes, not con artists and structural collapse. This mismatch means you and appos panic at a dog barking while ignoring the carbon monoxide building up in your room. You and appos freeze at someone yelling while walking past the person planning to rob you. Your threat detector is miscalibrated for modern danger, and recalibrating it requires conscious override. You have to train yourself to recognize new patterns. The person standing too close, the exit that an appos blocked, the smell that an appos wrong, the silence that shouldn't an appos be there. Because your automatic system will keep failing you in exactly the same ways until you teach it new rules. And the cost of not updating your threat recognition software is walking straight into disasters you should have seen coming. Pay attention. The sixth rule is the freeze response paradox. Everyone talks about fight or flight like those are the only options. They and appos not. Freezing is the most common response to sudden threat, and it and appos also the most misunderstood. When you freeze, you and appos not choosing to do nothing. Your motor cortex is locked down by competing survival signals. Part of your brain screams run, part screams fight, and the conflict creates paralysis. You and appos stuck not because you and appos weak, but because your neural circuits are in a deadlock. And here in appos the twist. Sometimes freezing is the right response. Playing dead works for certain threats. Staying still prevents detection. But your conscious mind doesn't and appos. Know when your body chose freeze strategically versus when it and appos. Just glitching. So you stand there while a threat escalates, and later you hate yourself for not moving. The science shows the freeze response can last anywhere from milliseconds to minutes depending on how your vagus nerve regulates your heart rate. Some people snap out of it fast. Others stay locked until the threat passes or someone physically moves them. The brutal reality. You can and appos. Think your way out of a freeze. Your thinking brain is offline. What breaks the freeze is physical sensation. Pain, cold, someone grabbing you, a loud unexpected sound. If you see someone frozen during danger, dawn and appos. Tell them to move. Touch them, shake them, shout in their ear. Sensory shock breaks the neural deadlock. And if you and appos, the one who freezes, have a mantra or a physical anchor prepared in advance. Something your body can do on autopilot when your mind checks out. The seventh psychological mechanism is pain suppression, and it creates a dangerous illusion. When your body dumps adrenaline and endorphins during extreme stress, you can be seriously injured without feeling it. People in combat walk on broken legs. People in attacks don and appos. Notice they and appos, bleeding until someone points it out. Your brain decides that pain signals are less important than survival signals, so it mutes them. This is great for short-term survival but catastrophic for assessment. You think you and appos, fine. You keep moving. You don and appos. Realize you and appos. Losing blood or that your arm doesn't and appos. Work anymore. By the time the adrenaline wears off and the pain comes back, you and appos. They made the injury worse or missed the window for treatment. The science behind this is called stress-induced analgesia, where opioid receptors in your brain get activated without any drugs. Your body becomes its own morphine factory. The practical danger. After any high-stress event, you must physically check yourself for damage even if you feel normal. Look for blood. Test your limbs. Check for numbness or weakness. Because your internal danger alarm is broken and one an appos. Tell you what an appos. Wrong until it an appos. Too late. And if you an appos, helping someone else after a threat, assume they an appos. Hurt even if they say they an appos, fine. Their brain is lying to them the same way yours lies to you. The eighth trap is social proof under duress, and it an appos. How groups of people make collectively stupid decisions. When you an appos, uncertain and scared, your brain looks for social cues from others to decide what to do. If everyone and appos, staying calm, you stay calm. If everyone and appos, running, you run. Sounds logical except for one problem. Everyone else is doing the same thing. You and appos. All copying each other in a feedback loop of collective ignorance. This is why entire crowds walk past emergency exits during fires because everyone and appos following the person in front. This is why bystanders freeze during attacks because they and appos waiting for someone else to act first. Your mirror neuron system creates a herd mentality precisely when you need independent thinking. The neuroscience shows that under stress, your brain prioritizes social conformity over individual assessment. Being wrong with the group feels safer than being right alone. But wrong with the group means dying with the group. The counter instinct you need to develop. When everyone and appos doing the same thing during danger, assume they and appos all wrong until proven otherwise. Trust your direct sensory input over social consensus. If you smell smoke but nobody and appos evacuating, you evacuate. If you see a threat but nobody and appos reacting, you react. Being the first to break from the herd might make you look paranoid, but it also might save your life while the herd stands around waiting for permission to survive. Stay with me. The ninth mechanism is memory distortion, and it means you can and appos trust your own recall of dangerous events. Your hippocampus, the part of your brain that encodes memories, malfunctions during high stress. So your memory of what happened becomes fragmented, rearranged, and filled with gaps your brain fills in with guesses. Witnesses to the same event give completely different accounts, not because they and appos lying, but because their brains recorded different partial versions and then confabulated the rest. You might remember details that never happened. You might forget crucial moments entirely. Time sequences get scrambled. The order of events becomes fiction. And you and Apos, LL swear your version is accurate because your brain presents these false memories with complete confidence. Studies show that stress hormones actually enhance some memory formation while destroying others, creating this weird mix of crystal clear recall of useless details, like the color of someone and Apos' shirt, alongside total amnesia about critical information like their face or what they said. The practical implication: after any dangerous situation, write down what you remember immediately. Don and Apos discuss it with others first because their version will contaminate yours. And never make important decisions based solely on your memory of a high-stress event. Your brain is a creative storyteller when it and Apos' scared, not a reliable witness. You made it this far, which means you and Apos starting to see how deep the rabbit hole goes. Your brain ISN and Apos the ally you thought it was under pressure. It and Apos more like a panicked co-pilot who grabs the controls and makes everything worse while thinking it and Apos saving you. But Don and Apos relax now. What comes next is where people who understand this stuff separate from people who stay victims of their own nervous system. Stay with me because the next mechanisms are the difference between someone who maintains control when reality fractures and someone who becomes another casualty of their own psychology. The 10th rule is the action override bias, and it kills people who should survive. When humans face anger, they're in Apos' a powerful urge to do something, anything, rather than nothing. Action feels like control. Stillness feels like helplessness. So people run when they should hide. They confront when they should retreat. They make noise when they should be silent. Your brain equates movement with agency, and under stress, that equation becomes absolute. But sometimes the right response is to do nothing. Wait, observe, let the threat pass. Your action bias doesn't and Apos care about right or wrong. It just demands motion. This comes from the motor cortex getting flooded with stress hormones that prime your muscles for movement. Staying still requires active inhibition from your prefrontal cortex, which is exactly the part of your brain that goes offline during fear. So you and Apos refighting your own neurology to remain motionless when motion could be fatal. People survive active shooters by hiding in silence. People die because they couldn't and Apos resist the urge to run. The skill you need to develop is action discipline. The ability to sit in discomfort and resist the compulsion to move until you and Apos they assessed whether movement helps or hurts. This might be the hardest thing your nervous system will ever ask you to do, because every fiber of your being will scream that doing nothing is doing wrong. The 11th psychological trap is emotional contagion, and it spreads panic faster than any virus. When you see fear in someone else and Apos' face, your mirror neurons fire and create the same fear in your brain. You catch their panic like you catch a cold. And unlike cognitive decisions, this happens in milliseconds, way below conscious awareness. One scared person creates two scared people. 2 create 4. 4 create 8. The exponential spread of terror through a group is neurological, not rational. Your amygdala doesn't and Apos care why the other person is scared. It just registers their fear expression and replicates it. This is how stampedes start. One person panics, and within seconds everyone and Apos running without knowing why. The evolutionary logic makes sense. If your tribe mate sees a predator and runs, you should run too, not waste time asking questions. But in modern contexts, this mechanism misfires constantly. Someone looks worried on a plane, and suddenly you and Apos reconvinced you and Apos re-crashing. Someone screams in a crowd, and you and Apos ready to trample people to escape a threat that doesn't and Apos exist. The counter strategy is emotional firebreaking. If you and Apos in a group during danger, your affect matters. If you can maintain calm body language and a neutral face, you reduce panic spread. But if you let your fear show, you become a transmission vector for group hysteria. Control your expression even if you can and Apos control your internal state. Because your face is broadcasting signals that reprogram everyone else and Apos' amygdala around you. The 12th mechanism is decision fatigue collapse, and it happens when threats are sustained or repeated. Your brain has a limited capacity for high-stakes decisions before it starts making progressively worse choices. Each decision under stress depletes your glucose reserves and exhausts your prefrontal cortex. By the fifth or sixth critical decision, you and APOS, essentially mentally bankrupt. You start picking options at random. You default to whatever and APOS, easiest. You give up on assessment entirely. Researchers studying disasters found that survivors often made one or two good decisions early, then a cascade of terrible decisions later as their decision-making capacity collapsed. You can watch someone and APOS' judgment visibly deteriorate in real time as the crisis continues. The practical reality: during extended danger, you need decision rest periods. Moments where you stop assessing and just execute a predetermined action. You can and APOS be in decision mode continuously or your brain will mutiny. This is why emergency protocols exist, to remove decisions from the equation when people in APOS' brains stop working. If you and APOS facing ongoing threat, preload as many decisions as possible. Decide in advance where you and APOS go, what you and APOS do, who you and APOS trust. Because by the time you and APOS in the middle of it, your decision-making engine will be running on fumes and every choice will be a coin flip dressed up as logic. Here in APOS where it gets personal. You ever been in a situation where everything felt wrong but you couldn't in APOS explain why? That in APOS your 13th mechanism, interoceptive awareness disruption. Your brain normally monitors signals from your body, heart rate, breathing, muscle tension, gut sensations, and uses that data to guide decisions. But under threat, that monitoring system gets overwhelmed. You stop feeling your body accurately. You can and APOS tell if you and APOS breathing fast or slow. You dawn and APOS notice your muscles are locked up. You lose the internal compass that normally helps you navigate uncertainty. This is catastrophic because your gut feelings, those preconscious warnings that something and APOS dangerous, depend on interoceptive signals. When those signals become noise, you lose your early warning system. You walk into obvious traps because your body and APOS alarm system is firing so loud it and APOS just static. The science shows that people with strong interoceptive awareness survive threats better because they can read their own fear responses and use them as data rather than being consumed by them. The skill to develop: body scanning during stress. Even if it and APOS just 3 seconds, mentally check in with your physical state. Are you breathing? Is your jaw clenched? Are your shoulders up by your ears? This brief reconnection with your body can restore just enough awareness to make better choices. Without it, you and APOS a ghost in your own meat, making decisions with no physical context. You would do this if your mind started to fail, right? Or maybe you and APOS freeze like everyone else. You ever lived something where your brain just stopped working the way you expected? Drop it in the comments because I genuinely want to know if you and APOS felt that moment when your own mind becomes the enemy. The 14th rule is the normalcy bias death spiral, and it and APOS responsible for more preventable deaths than almost any other psychological mechanism. When danger emerges gradually, your brain keeps trying to fit it into normal patterns. The smell of smoke? Probably just someone cooking. The building shaking? Must be construction. The person following you? Probably coincidence. Your brain is so invested in maintaining the illusion of normalcy that it will ignore, minimize, and rationalize clear warning signs until the threat is undeniable and often too late to escape. This happens because accepting danger requires mental work and emotional discomfort. Your brain wants to conserve energy and avoid stress, so it defaults to and everything and APOS fine and even when everything is clearly not fine. People die in their apartments during fires because they convinced themselves it wasn't an APOS serious until the flames were at their door. People get attacked because they explained away every warning sign until the violence was already happening. The neuroscience shows that the anterior cingulate cortex, which detects conflicts between expectation and reality, gets suppressed during stress, making you even more committed to your normal world narrative precisely when you should be abandoning it. The counter instinct: practice catastrophic thinking. When something seems off, imagine the worst-case scenario first. Not to panic, but to test your response. If this smoke is a real fire, what do I do right now? If this person is actually following me, What an apos, s my exit. Train yourself to assume danger and to escalate from there, rather than assuming safety and being forced to escalate. Because the bias toward normalcy is comfortable right up until it kills you. The 15th and final mechanism is post-threat collapse, and it an apos, s what happens after you survive. Once the danger passes, your nervous system doesn't and apos, t gradually return to normal. It crashes hard. The adrenaline and cortisol that kept you moving drain away all at once, and you and apos, left with shaking hands, weak legs, nausea, confusion, and sometimes complete emotional breakdown. This is called parasympathetic rebound, where your body swings from extreme activation to extreme shutdown. People make fatal mistakes in this window because they think the danger is over, so they relax their guard, but they and apos, actually in a state of severe cognitive impairment. You can barely think, you can barely move, and if they're an apos, a secondary threat, or if you need to keep functioning, you and apos, nearly helpless. The science shows this rebound can last from minutes to hours depending on how intense and prolonged the threat was. The practical danger. Never assume you and apos, safe just because the immediate threat stopped. Get to actual safety first. Put distance and barriers between you and the danger zone. Only then allow the collapse to happen. And if you and apos, helping someone who just survived something traumatic, understand they and apos, not weak or broken. Their nervous system is doing exactly what it and apos, supposed to do after extreme stress. They need time and physical safety to recalibrate. Pushing them to function normally before they and apos, recover just creates more damage. Your body knows what it needs. Sometimes that and apos, shaking. Sometimes that and apos, crying. Sometimes that and apos, staring at nothing for 10 minutes. Let it happen, but only when you and apos, actually safe enough to afford the shutdown. You just learned more about how your mind betrays you under pressure than most people figure out in a lifetime of dangerous situations. You and apos, not the same person who started reading this. You can and apos, unsee these mechanisms now. Every time your heart rate spikes, every time something feels wrong, you and apos, recognize the patterns. You and apos, feel your vision narrow and know what an apos, happening. You and apos, catch yourself freezing and understand why. You and apos, notice the time distortion and the memory gaps and the stupid decisions that seem smart in the moment. This knowledge doesn't and apos, make you invincible. It makes you aware. And awareness is the only weapon you have against a brain that and apos, trying to save you using software written for threats that don't and apos, exist anymore. You can and apos, reprogram your nervous system completely, but you can learn to work with it instead of being its victim. You can interrupt the patterns. You can override the defaults. You can survive situations that would break someone who doesn't and apos, know the rules. If you want more knowledge that changes how your mind reacts to danger, subscribe to this channel. Because this is just the beginning of understanding the machinery running inside your skull. Next week I and apos, showing you the mental mechanism that makes intelligent people take fatal decisions. The cognitive trap that turns your strengths into weaknesses the moment pressure hits. You won and apos, want to miss it. The mind saves. The mind kills. The difference is knowing when it and apos, lying to you.